Welcome back, Santa Clarita Valley. We're here on your Neighborhood Watch twice a month, talking about public safety, community outreach with Deputy Josh Dubin of the Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff Station Crime Prevention Unit in the house. How are we doing, Deputy Dubin?
I had to bring you coffee this morning.
You know what? I thoroughly appreciate that coffee. That was a gentleman's gesture for, our partnership on this show. You bring me some coffee, and I don't bring much to the table, huh?
No.
I just offer.
I bring you coffee. I carry the show. My goodness.
Carry the show. Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Hi, Kyle.
Kyle, putting humility in a drawer for the next hour, apparently.
I told you I was going to start the show off with a little bang.
I like it.
Have
you seen 50 Shades yet?
No.
Okay, good.
Have you?
No.
Did you take your girlfriend to it on Valentine's Day?
No. She's not that.
Let me ask you a question, Barry.
Sure.
What did you do for your girlfriend on Valentine's Day?
I opened the door for that one. We had a little staycation. We actually went out to Ojai weekend before.
Really?
Had a nice little weekend out. And then both of us had to work at various times over the last weekend, so we kind of stayed in town and just hung out, appreciated each other.
So you went to Ojai and maybe had a little dinner?
We did.
Was there any flowers exchanged?
There was a flower exchange. I brought the flowers to work on Friday.
Wow.
Money move, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
And let's not forget to tell our listeners that you do have a giant 8.5 by 11 picture of her on your desk.
I do. Courtesy of Kirsten Quinn, of course.
Yeah, and if she's listening, I really think we need to step up to like the 30 by 30 size.
I told her that's going to be my proportionate response. Is I'm going to get her a poster size picture, maybe of the Neighborhood Watch. Maybe get our logo in the background.
That's a great idea. We could get a picture of you and I and blow it up to like 30 by 30 and put it on her desk.
Can we go like shoulder like Bash Brothers style poster, like back to back? Looking
That'd be
tough.
Good. Yeah. Absolutely.
That would sell, and maybe not even just a gift. Maybe we can go market that.
Right.
For the show.
And maybe we could have like Kyle's little head in the background or something like that.
I don't know if Kyle has to be a part of this. He really is the silent partner. But, we're all about community outreach here and doing this show. And you were doing a little community outreach earlier this week, Rio Norte, with some parents.
Absolutely.
And you've been talking with Heart District parents throughout the valley over the last, as long as you've been here. But more recently, you just kind of been on a speaking tour, if you will, right?
A speaking tour. Yeah, you know what?
No book signings, but
Right. Was that Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday night, about 6:30 at night, we, myself and representatives from the William S. Hart Union School District, Assistant Principal Sherry from Canyon High, Kathy Hunter, we did a presentation for parents, students, and not only for students that went to Rio Norte, the junior high students, but also from the feeder elementary schools that will end up going to Rio Norte. And some of the things that we talked about were responsibility, social media, texting, sexting.
And it's probably really important, I would guess, to be able to talk to those parents coming in, because they're the ones that are just learning about those. Like when you're in the 5th and 6th grade, you don't really know a whole lot about it.
Right.
By the time you're in 7th and 8th grade, you're all over the phones and the social media
right.
stuff, right?
And so we talked about some of the common apps that we're seeing at the sheriff's station. The district officials talked about some of the common apps that they're seeing when they have students that they come in contact with. And then at the very end, we encourage people to bring their students' cell phones. And then at the very end, we had an open dialogue and a discussion. A lot of parents stayed afterwards and said, "Hey, can you look at my phone? And this is my kid's phone. And what do what apps are on here?" And many of the phones have the apps that we were
really okay.
Of.
Talk to me about that, because I know our listeners are probably thinking the same thing I am. What are the apps? What are we looking out for here?
Well, not that necessarily, that any of them. I'm not.
No, not to say they're necessarily bad apps, but just things that in the wrong hands or with the wrong intentions or without supervision, those apps can get kids in trouble, or they can do things that.
Some of the apps that we were seeing on there is Ask FM.
I've heard about that one.
Snapchat. Tumblr.
What about Whisper? I heard that
Whispers is another one. Twitter, Instagram.
Now, on the Ask one, I saw that it was like ask.fm, and kids post questions, and then they have the responses.
Right.
I don't understand where,
Well, you can make an account, and I can make an account, but you necessarily might not know that I'm Josh on the account. So then I could go onto your account, and you give me your username. Say it's Redheaded Perry.
Oh, Redheaded Perry. Okay.
And so then I would log on to yours, and I would ask you a question, and then I would be allegedly anonymous, and then you would answer the question. It's a way of anonymously asking questions, where it comes into a problem with our young people, and sometimes they don't even realize it.
predators.
Right. You don't know sometimes who's asking a question. A lot of people are asking, sexually suggestive questions. A lot of people are dealing possibly with, struggling with their own sexuality and then asking questions and maybe not getting the proper information in return from that. So, yeah,
and then like what we saw with the Purge, where kids are sending pictures to each other. Right. I'm sure you probably
we kind of discussed that and, some of the pros and cons with it and, responsibility with it and stuff like that. Exciting stuff.
And also coming up on the show, we're going to have on our next segment, Lieutenant Andy Rosso from the Contract Law Enforcement Bureau with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And you're familiar with the Contract Law Enforcement Bureau. You know exactly.
I'm going to get educated.
You're going to get educated.
Next segment.
So are our listeners. My understanding is that they talk about, and I'm obviously going to let Lieutenant Rosso explain this a little better, but they look at kind of the nuts and bolts for operations, and they figure out the cost for the Sheriff's Department, and they help other cities assess their costs, and if they want to look at the Sheriff's Department as their contract agency, because obviously the Sheriff's Department covers all of Los Angeles County, and then there are certain cities that contract, like Santa Clarita, they contract with those services, and they don't have, instead of a police department, they use the Sheriff's Department for their police force.
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Lieutenant Andy Rosso is on the line, and we got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back on your Neighborhood Watch, brought to you by All-American Bail Bonds on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back. We're here on your Neighborhood Watch. Deputy Josh Dubin with me in the studio from the Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff's Station. On your Neighborhood Watch, brought to you by All-American Bail Bonds. Twice a month, we talk about community outreach, and we get to know the people that are keeping our community safe at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. On the line with me is Lieutenant Andy Rosso. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning. Doing very well.
Lieutenant Rosso, just for our listeners, give them a little background. Can you talk to us about your experience with the Sheriff's Department and how you joined the department, and then we'll get to where you are now with the Contract Law Enforcement Bureau. But I know you've had you're a lieutenant now, and you've had a few different assignments in the department, right?
Absolutely, sure. I've been on the department 25 years now, and I've worked mainly patrol assignments, and this job that I'm in now at our Contract Law Enforcement Bureau. Back in 2008, I was assigned to the Santa Clarita Station as a watch commander.
Oh, okay. So you were here from 2008 till how long?
For a year.
And then you were also in Malibu, I believe?
Yes, I was assigned as a watch commander at Malibu Lost Hills Station, and then I went over to our Transit Services Bureau, and then finally ended up working there at our Metrolink Bureau that works with the commuter trains.
So what was your first assignment with the department when you first joined? 25 years ago?
I was a deputy sheriff at the jails out near you at Pitches Detention Center.
Oh, right on. We've talked to a lot of people that started out in Pitches.
Right.
Yes.
It's a pretty big facility out there. And talk to me about how did you join the what made you join the department, or what inspired you to become a member?
Well, I was finishing up college, and I was at the time a reservist in the Army National Guard, and I was just exploring career possibilities, and I went out on a ride-along with a deputy at the West Hollywood station to see what deputy sheriffs do out in the field, and that gave me some exposure to what it did. I saw, an ad in the newspaper that they were hiring, and I decided to do something that I would want to do.
Right on. And as far as what you do now, it's called the Contract Law Enforcement Bureau?
Yes, we're an administrative unit for the department that oversees the contracts for law enforcement services, such as cities like Santa Clarita, or transit agencies like LA County Metro or Metrolink, and community colleges, LA City Community Colleges in LA County.
What types of, it sounds like a bit of a behind-the-scenes type of operation when you say administrative. What types of, what types of duties do you perform with the contract, for the Contract Law Enforcement Bureau?
Well, I think one of the most important functions that we do is we work with the LA County Auditor Controller to determine what the cost is every year to get a black and white out in the field with a deputy in it to provide service to one of our contract cities. And then when there's a consideration to add service, or a city wants to become a contract city, we get involved in the analysis of that and determining personnel costs, if there's new equipment costs, new facility costs, when there's going to be an addition to our law enforcement services.
So how closely does the Sheriff's Department track those kinds of things? Because I've heard it's pretty specific as far as how closely you look at, when a deputy's out on a scene, or, just when there's a situation that calls for a sheriff's department response?
Oh, absolutely. We monitor it to the minute where the deputies spend their time in the contract cities, as you said, from when the call is dispatched to the deputy to they arrive on scene and they finish the assignment, be it arresting somebody, writing a report, or just maybe keeping the peace at some type of incident. So we track it based on the computers that the deputies have in the cars to the minute. Make sure that we're providing the service that the city is paying for.
I was just going to ask, so the computer sends a signal to some type of recorder that lets you guys know exactly like where the car is and how long they're there for?
Absolutely. So we have a database that collects all that data. Its acronym is RAPS, Regional Allocation of Police Services. So it tracks a variety of things such as response times to get to emergency priority, or routine calls, and the amount of time we spend on certain types of calls is used to track a lot of data to see what the deputies are doing out there.
And so, like for the service calls and like the response time, when there is, like, say someone says, well, we'd like to change the response time, then you guys use all of those computer, algorithms, and you try to figure out how you can, how you
Absolutely.
can adjust that?
We look at the guidelines that we have for response times, that if they start to exceed those times, we take a look and see if it's a staffing issue, that there needs to be more staffing, or maybe it could be a deployment issue where maybe somebody has to be moved from one shift to the other based on the demand out there with the public.
So are there quite a few accountants in the in this special bureau of the Sheriff's Department, or do you undergo a training to transition from a patrol deputy per se or administrator to someone who can track and audit and work with the auditor's office and all that kind of stuff?
Well, for myself personally, I got my master's degree, an MBA, and with an emphasis in finance. So for me, it was a little bit easy the transition to do it. And most of the training for our sworn staff at my unit is on-the-job training, but we do work closely with the accountants that are assigned to the county office of the auditor and controller, and also as far as billing and things like that, that we work with our professional staff on the Sheriff's Department to make sure we're billing properly. And those people are generally accountants.
Right, and you also mentioned doing comparisons for cost savings. So I'd imagine, like, if a city is looking at adopting the Sheriff's Department as its service as opposed to a police department, then you guys break down the analysis for them as far as what they would maybe save, or what kind of services you guys could offer.
Absolutely. So a city, oftentimes, if they're looking at financial constraints, they will consider the option of contracting out their public safety services for their police department to become the Sheriff's Department for them. And often we find that in the ballpark of they could save off of their law enforcement budget of 30% to even as much as 50%, depending on the nature of the agency. Every police department's a little bit different.
Sure, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit, ask you a little bit about how that savings works out and how you quantify that. Can I have you hang on the line for another quick commercial break, and we'll be right back?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Lieutenant Rosso. Appreciate that. That's your Neighborhood Watch with Deputy Josh Dubin and myself in the studio. We'll be right back after a quick commercial break from All American Bail Bonds on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.